The wind came down from the Bighorn Mountains with nothing to slow it. It crossed miles of pale grass, bent the cottonwoods along Dry Creek, and struck Eli Mercer's ranch house hard enough to make the roof boards complain. By November, the creek had narrowed to a black ribbon beneath shelves of ice. The cattle gathered in the low ground with their tails to the weather, waiting for a winter that had already begun to show its teeth. Eli had lived alone on the Bar M for 6 years. Each morning, he rose before daylight, broke the ice in the water troughs, fed the stove, and warmed yesterday's coffee in a dented pot. He ate standing at the counter because the kitchen table had become a place for harness buckles, fence staples, and unopened mail. The house had 4 rooms, but Eli used only 2. Dust lay thick on the piano in the front room. A blue dress still hung in the back bedroom, covered by a sheet. Eli had stopped opening that door. He had also stopped attending church suppers, town dances, and nearly every gathering that required him to answer questions about how he was managing. He managed because the animals needed feeding. He managed because fences broke whether a man was grieving or not. He managed because morning always came. But by the first heavy frost, even Eli could see that the ranch was slipping beyond the reach of one pair of hands. Meals had become strips of salt pork, burned black in a pan. Laundry waited until he had nothing clean left. Flower beetles occupied the pantry. 2 calves died during an October storm because Eli was mending the barn roof when he should have been checking the north pasture. His nearest neighbor, Tom Bell, found him asleep at the kitchen table one afternoon, with his coat still wet from sleet. "You need help," Tom said. "I need Winter to hold off. Winter ain't listening." Eli lifted his head and rubbed the red mark left by his sleeve. Tom looked at the unwashed dishes, the damp firewood, and the line of muddy footprints crossing the floor. "Post for a housekeeper." Eli gave a humorless laugh. What woman would come this far out? One who needs work. Eli turned toward the window. Beyond the glass, the wind drove loose straw across the yard. He did not want another person in the house. Another voice would reach places he had boarded shut. Another set of footsteps might pass the back bedroom. Another lamp burning after dark might make the place resemble a home again, and he did not trust anything that could be lost twice. 3 days later, he rode 12 miles into Mason Ridge. At the general store, he bought coffee, lamp oil, flour, and a sheet of writing paper. He sat at the rear counter while the shopkeeper watched him struggle with the wording. Housekeeper wanted at Bar M Ranch, room, board, and monthly wages. Must know cooking, washing, and household work. Ranch is 12 miles north of Mason Ridge. Winter employment guaranteed. He paused, then added one final sentence. A child may be accommodated. He had no reason for writing it. Perhaps he remembered the widows who came west with children and found every respectable position closed to them. Perhaps he remembered that his own mother had taken in sewing after his father died. He folded the notice and paid to have it printed in 3 newspapers. By Christmas, there had been no answer. January buried the fence posts and froze the pump handle to the touch. February brought a warm spell that turned the ranch yard to brown soup, followed by a cold snap that hardened every hoofprint like stone. Then, on the 2nd day of March, Eli found a letter at the Mason Ridge post office. The handwriting was narrow and careful. "Mr. Mercer, I am answering your notice for a housekeeper. My name is Lin Mei. I am a widow with 2 children, a son aged 11 and a daughter aged 7. I can cook, wash, mend, preserve food, tend a garden, and keep accounts. I speak and read English. We are presently in Red Bluff. If the position remains open, please send your reply to the Mission Boarding House. Respectfully, Lin Mei Eli read the letter twice. He knew of Red Bluff. It was a railroad settlement nearly 80 miles south, crowded with workers, gamblers, merchants, and men who vanished when the tracks moved on. He imagined a desperate woman writing to every notice she could find. He placed the letter inside his coat and told himself he would answer after buying supplies. Instead, he sat at the same counter where he had written his advertisement and composed a reply. The position remains open. I can meet the northbound stage in Mason Ridge on March 18th. The house has sufficient rooms. Your children will not be expected to work for their keep. He stared at that final sentence for a long time. Then, he signed his name. On March 18th, snow began falling before dawn. The stage arrived 3 hours late, its wheels packed with ice, and its horses steaming beneath wet blankets. Eli waited beneath the awning of the general store, holding the reins of his wagon team. The driver climbed down first. Then a boy appeared, thin and solemn, wearing a coat too large for him. He carried a wooden box tied with rope. A small girl followed. She clutched a cloth doll beneath her coat and looked at the snow as if she had never trusted it. Their mother stepped down last. Lin Mei was perhaps 30, though weariness made her seem older at first glance. She wore a dark wool coat, mended at both elbows, and carried a brown leather case. Her black hair was pinned beneath a plain hat. She stood straight, despite the long journey. "Mr. Mercer?" "Yes." "I am Lin Mei. This is my son, Jun, and my daughter, Lan." Eli removed his hat. "Ma'am." For a moment, none of them moved. The girl stared at Eli's beard. The boy studied the wagon. Lin Mei looked past Eli toward the empty road north. "Is the ranch very far?" she asked. 12 miles. "Is the house warm?" "When the stove behaves." The smallest trace of concern crossed her face. "It behaves most days," he added. Lin Mei nodded. Their belongings consisted of the leather case, the wooden box, 2 blankets, and a round tin wrapped in cloth. Eli loaded everything into the wagon. He spread a buffalo robe across the seat for the children, then climbed up beside Lin Mei. The road disappeared under new snow before they were halfway to the ranch. Eli spoke only when necessary. He pointed out Dry Creek, the eastern pasture, and the distant line of trees marking his property. Lin Mei asked where he stored water and how often supplies could be purchased in town. Her questions were practical. She did not ask about him. Jun held the wooden box on his knees. Lan fell asleep against her mother's side. Near sunset, the ranch house appeared through the snow. It was larger than Lin Mei had expected, but lonelier too. The barn leaned slightly east. A broken wagon wheel rested beside the porch. No smoke rose from the chimney because Eli had been away since morning. Inside, the air was colder than the stage station. Eli lit the stove and showed them 2 bedrooms at the end of the hall. When he passed the closed door of the third, his pace quickened. "You may use these," he said. "The children can share the smaller room." Lin Mei placed her case beside the larger bed. "What time do you take breakfast?" "Before daylight." "How long before?" "Half an hour." She nodded once. "What foods do you dislike?" Eli looked at her, caught unprepared. "Turnips." "Anything else?" "No. I will remember." He gave her a month's wages in advance. She counted the coins, then returned 2. "For food on the journey," she said. "The mission paid the stage fare. Keep it. I did not earn it." "You came 80 miles through snow." "That was my decision." Eli recognized something in her voice. Pride, perhaps, but sharpened by the knowledge that pride was one of the few things she had left. He took the coins back. That evening, Lin Mei opened the round tin she had carried from Red Bluff. Inside were tea leaves, dried mushrooms, and a small packet of rice. She made a thin soup with potatoes from Eli's cellar and a piece of salt pork. It was simple, hot, and better than anything he had eaten in months. They sat around the kitchen table after Eli cleared away his tools. Jun watched him closely. "Are there wolves?" the boy asked. "Some. Near the house? Not if they know what's good for them." Lan whispered something to her mother in Chinese. Lin Mei answered softly, then looked at Eli. "She asks whether wolves understand English." Eli considered the question. "Only the old ones." Lan studied his face, uncertain whether he was teasing. Then she smiled. It was the first child's smile the house had seen in 6 years. The first weeks passed carefully. Lin Mei woke before Eli, though he never heard her rise. By the time he entered the kitchen, the stove was burning and coffee sat beside a bowl of oats. She kept her own tea in a small blue cup and saved the leaves for a second steeping at noon. She cleaned one room at a time. She did not attack the disorder as though it offended her. She simply made small places usable again. A cleared section of counter appeared beside the stove. The muddy coats received wooden pegs. The harness buckles vanished from the table and returned in a labeled box. Eli found the flour barrel emptied, scrubbed, and refilled after the beetles were sifted out. Torn curtains were washed and mended. The kitchen windows stopped rattling after strips of folded cloth appeared along their frames. She never opened the closed bedroom door. Jun began following Eli to the barn after his morning lessons. The boy knew little about cattle, but he observed everything. He watched how Eli approached a nervous horse from the side, how he checked a hoof, and how he listened to an animal's breathing. "You don't grab first," Eli told him. "You let it know where you are." Jun nodded. The next morning, Eli found him standing beside an old sorrel mare, one hand extended, waiting for her to turn. Lan remained close to the house. She collected feathers, buttons, stones, and pieces of colored glass. She arranged them on the porch rail in long, precise rows. When Eli passed, she covered them with both hands. "I won't take them," he said. The next day, she left the row uncovered. At supper, conversation remained sparse. Lin Mei prepared beef with onions, potatoes fried in lard, biscuits lighter than Eli thought possible, and on Sundays, rice cooked with dried mushrooms. She learned that he liked coffee strong enough to leave grit at the bottom of the cup. He learned that she preferred the heel of the bread. If Eli returned late, a plate waited near the stove beneath an overturned bowl. If Lin Mei carried water from the pump, she found the buckets moved indoors before the handles could freeze. Neither thanked the other every time. The work itself became their language. By April, snowmelt filled Dry Creek and turned the lower pasture green. Lin Mei planted cabbage, beans, onions, and medicinal herbs in a patch sheltered by the house. Eli broke the ground with a plow. Jun removed stones. Lan pressed seeds into the soil with one finger, then covered them as tenderly as sleeping eyes. One afternoon, Eli returned from repairing fence and found his shirts hanging on the line. The missing buttons had been replaced. Each one was different: bone, brass, shell, and dark wood. He ran his thumb across them that evening. "My husband repaired watches," Lin Mei said from the stove. "He kept buttons when customers did not return for old clothes." Eli looked toward her. It was the first time she had mentioned him. What was his name? Lin Wei. She continued slicing carrots. "He died 2 years ago." Eli waited, but she offered nothing more. He understood the boundary and did not cross it. A week later, Lin Mei asked about the piano. "It belonged to my wife," he said. She stopped folding a dish towel. "I am sorry. Her name was Sarah." That was all he could manage. Lin Mei inclined her head. She never asked how Sarah had died. In May, Jun fell from the corral fence. The boy landed badly and cried out, clutching his wrist. Eli reached him first. He knelt in the dust, examined the swelling, and sent Lin Mei for a board and clean cloth. "It may be broken," she said. I'll take him to the doctor. The nearest doctor lived in Mason Ridge. A storm was gathering in the west, but Eli harnessed the fastest team. Lin Mei climbed into the wagon with Jun. You should stay with Lan, Eli said. I go with my son. There was no argument in her tone, because there was no possibility of argument. They left Lan with Tom Bell's wife and reached town as rain struck the roofs. The doctor found no break, only a hard sprain. He wrapped the wrist and instructed Jun to rest it. On the ride home, the storm trapped them beneath an overhang of rock. Rain fell in silver sheets beyond the wagon. Jun slept with his head in his mother's lap. You did not hesitate, Lin Mei said. About what? The doctor. He needed one. Some men would have waited. Eli watched rain pour from the brim of his hat. Some men are fools. Lin Mei looked down at her sleeping son. We have known many fools. Eli heard the weight behind the words, but the storm passed before she explained them. Summer settled over the ranch. Grass rose to the horses' knees. The children grew brown beneath the sun. Lan stopped hiding when Eli entered a room. Jun learned to mend fence, coil rope, and saddle the sorrel mare. Lin Mei kept the ranch accounts in a narrow ledger. One evening, she showed Eli that the general store had charged him twice for 6 sacks of feed. That old fox, Eli muttered. She turned the page. He also owes you credit for 3 hides. The next time Eli rode to town, he returned with the money and a paper parcel. He placed it beside her ledger. Inside was a set of steel sewing needles, 2 spools of thread, and a blue ribbon. The storekeeper surrendered without bloodshed, he said. Lin Mei touched the packet of needles. These cost too much. So did 6 sacks of feed. She almost smiled. Lan wore the ribbon the next Sunday. The closed bedroom remained untouched until August. A dry thunderstorm rolled across the range, sending lightning into the north pasture. Eli and Jun were moving cattle when Lin Mei smelled smoke inside the house. A spark from the chimney had caught in the wall beside the closed room. She carried water from the kitchen and forced the door open. The room was preserved exactly as Sarah had left it. A hairbrush rested on the dresser. A pair of shoes waited beneath the bed. The blue dress hung against the wall beneath its sheet. Smoke curled from a beam near the ceiling. Lin Mei dragged the washstand aside, climbed onto a chair, and emptied water into the blackening boards. By the time Eli returned, she had stopped the fire. He entered the room and froze. Lin Mei stood with soot on her face. Wet plaster covered the floor. The sheet had fallen from the dress. I had to open it, she said. Eli stared at the room. For 6 years he had imagined that keeping it unchanged was a form of loyalty. Now the air smelled of smoke and wet ash. A dark stain spread across the wallpaper. Lan appeared in the doorway holding a broom. Eli's voice came out harder than he intended. Everyone out. The child retreated. Jun took her hand. Lin Mei stepped down from the chair. I am sorry. Eli could not look at her. That night he ate alone in the barn. Shame came slowly, settling heavier than anger. When he returned to the house, a lamp still burned in the kitchen. Lin Mei sat at the table mending Jun's shirt. You saved the house, Eli said. She pushed the needle through the cloth. Yes. I shouldn't have spoken that way. No. The word was quiet, but not forgiving. Eli stood with his hat in his hands. Sarah died in that room. Fever. I rode for the doctor, but the river was high. By the time I returned, she was gone. Lin Mei's hands became still. I thought if I left everything as it was, I hadn't abandoned her. You did not abandon her. I wasn't here. You went for help. I wasn't here. Lin Mei folded the shirt. My husband died beside a railroad camp. A loaded cart overturned. I was washing clothes for the foreman when they brought him to me. For a long time, I believed I should have made him stay home that morning. Eli sat across from her. Could you have? No. Then it wasn't yours to stop. Nor was the river yours. They remained at the table while the lamp flame shortened. The next morning, Eli opened the bedroom windows. He packed Sarah's clothes into a cedar chest. He kept the blue dress on top, folded carefully. Lin Mei helped repair the damaged wall. She did not touch anything until he handed it to her. By autumn, the room had become a schoolroom for the children. A map hung where the dress had been. Jun practiced figures at a small desk. Lan drew horses on scraps of brown paper. The house no longer contained a room where time had stopped. It contained a room waiting for tomorrow. The trouble came in October, carried in a black carriage. Eli saw it approaching while he was stacking hay. 2 men sat in front. The older one wore a dark suit and a wide hat. The younger had the flat metal badge of a deputy from Red Bluff. Lin Mei was gathering beans in the garden. When she saw the carriage, the basket slipped from her hands. Beans scattered across the ground. Jun moved beside his mother. Lan ran to the porch. The older man stepped down. "Mrs. Lin," he called, "you have been difficult to find." Eli crossed the yard. "You're on my property." The man removed his gloves. "My name is Silas Vane. I operate a labor office in Red Bluff. Mrs. Lin owes my company $140. Lin Mei's face had gone pale, but her voice remained steady. "I owe you nothing." Vane opened a leather folder. "Your late husband borrowed against future wages. Food, lodging, burial expenses, and transportation were added after his death. You signed acknowledgement of the account. I signed a paper I could not read. You told me you understood. You said it allowed me to collect his final pay." Vane smiled without warmth. "The document says otherwise." Eli looked at the deputy. "You came 80 miles to collect a disputed bill?" The young deputy shifted in his saddle. "Court order says Mrs. Lin must appear in Red Bluff." Vane's gaze moved toward Jun and Lan. "The boy is old enough to work. I offered Mrs. Lin a reasonable arrangement. His wages could reduce the account." Jun stiffened. Eli stepped between Vane and the family. "The boy works for no one. He is not your concern. He lives under my roof. That makes his safety my concern." Vane brushed dust from his sleeve. "Interfering with an order will cost you." Eli's hand rested near his belt, but he did not draw. "Then show me the order." The deputy produced a folded paper. Eli read slowly. He had little experience with courts, but he knew enough to see that the paper summoned Lin Mei to a hearing. It did not authorize Vane to take money, property, or children. "She'll appear," Eli said, "on the date written here." Vane looked toward Lin Mei. "You ran once. If you run again, the judge will hear of it." "I did not run," she said. "I left after you refused to pay me. You stole company property. I took my husband's tools listed against his debt." Lin Mei's fingers tightened around her skirt. Eli handed the order back to the deputy. "You've delivered it. Now leave." Vane climbed into the carriage. As it turned, his eyes settled on Jun. One way or another, accounts are paid. The carriage disappeared beyond the cottonwoods. That evening, Lin Mei packed the leather case she had arrived with. Eli found it on her bed. "What are you doing?" "We will leave before morning." "Where?" "West. With winter coming. If I go to Red Bluff, Vane will have witnesses and papers. He chooses men who owe him favors. He did it to others. If you don't go, he'll say the debt is true. He will say it anyway." Eli leaned against the doorframe. "Tell me what happened." Lin Mei sat on the edge of the bed. Lan's blue ribbon lay in her lap. She and Wei had come from California, after hearing that the railroad paid better wages in Wyoming. Vane had arranged their travel. Every week, new charges appeared in his ledger. Rent for a shack they had been told was free. Fees for tools Wei never received. Medicine after an illness. Interest on all of it. After Wei died, Vane withheld his final wages. He offered Lin Mei work in the camp kitchen, then charged her for the room where she and the children slept. The account grew regardless of how many hours she worked. A missionary taught her enough written English to recognize her husband's name in Vane's ledger. Beside it, she found payments that Vane claimed had never been made. She copied the entries before leaving Red Bluff. "Do you still have the copy?" Eli asked. Lin Mei opened the lining of her case and removed a folded sheet. The figures were neat. Dates, amounts, and names filled both sides. "Why didn't you tell me? I needed work, not rescue. I know. If I brought trouble here, you might send us away." Eli looked toward the hall. Jun and Lan stood near the schoolroom door, listening. The fear on their faces was quiet and familiar. It was the fear of people who had learned to pack quickly. Eli returned his gaze to Lin Mei. "I posted for a housekeeper," he said. "You answered. I gave my word about winter employment. This is more than employment." "Yes." She waited. Eli could not yet name what else it was. The hearing was set for 6 days later. Eli rode to Mason Ridge and spoke with the town clerk, the doctor, and the editor of the weekly newspaper. He sent Tom Bell to locate a former Red Bluff rail worker who had settled near Dry Creek. Lin Mei copied her notes twice and placed one copy in the bank safe. At night, Vane's threat seemed to linger outside the windows. Jun began sleeping with a chair beneath his door handle. Eli discovered it during his final check of the stove. "You don't need that," Eli said. Jun stood beside the bed, fists clenched. He looked at me like I belonged to him. "No man owns your labor without your agreement. He has papers." "Paper can carry a lie. What if the judge believes it?" Eli placed the chair back beside the desk. "Then we tell the truth again." On the morning before the hearing, the barn caught fire. The blaze began in a pile of straw near the west wall. Eli woke to the horses screaming. He ran outside barefoot, carrying a blanket, while Lin Mei filled buckets at the pump. Jun opened the corral gate. The horses burst into the yard. Lan rang the iron triangle until Tom Bell saw the smoke from his property and came riding. They saved most of the barn, but 30 bales of hay burned. One wall collapsed inward. In the ashes, Eli found a broken glass bottle smelling of kerosene. The sheriff arrived near noon. He examined the bottle and the carriage tracks along the southern road. "I can't prove who made them," he said. Eli looked at the burned barn. "Vane wants her frightened enough to disappear." "Likely. If she leaves, he wins the hearing without speaking." "Likely." The sheriff pushed his hat back. "What will she do?" Eli turned toward the house. Lin Mei stood on the porch with soot on her dress. One hand rested on Jun's shoulder. The other held Lan close. "She'll decide," Eli said. That night, the wind returned. It shook the repaired windows and sent sparks circling above the chimney. Lin Mei sat at the kitchen table, with the leather case packed beside her. Eli stood at the stove, warming his hands. "If we leave," she said, "the ranch may be safe." "No. You could lose the barn next time." "No. You do not know what he will do. Neither do you." She looked at him. "You have already lost enough." Eli lowered himself into the chair across from her. For a while, the only sound was wind and the faint ticking of the cooling stovepipe. "I spent 6 years keeping this house empty," he said. "Thought empty meant safe." Lin Mei's eyes remained on him. "It wasn't." He rubbed his rough palms together. "Then you came. Jun leaves every gate half open. Lan stores rocks in my boots. You put onions in nearly everything. You eat them." "I do." A small breath escaped her, almost a laugh, but her eyes shone. Eli looked toward the packed case. "I don't want the house empty again." Lin Mei touched the worn handle. "You hired a housekeeper. I know what I wrote. And now? He answered plainly. Now I'm asking you to stay, because this is your home, if you want it. She looked down at the table. My children too? Especially them. Jun stood in the dark hallway, holding Lan's hand. Lin Mei saw them. Her composure broke only slightly. She pressed her fingers to her mouth, then lowered them. If we stay, we face him. Yes. Together? Yes. She placed the leather case on the floor. All right, she said. At the Red Bluff courthouse, Vane arrived with a lawyer and 3 ledgers. Lin Mei arrived with Eli, her children, Tom Bell, and 2 former railroad workers who recognized the names in her copied accounts. The Mason Ridge newspaper editor carried notes from 6 other families who described similar debts. The hearing lasted most of the day. Vane's lawyer spoke often. Lin Mei spoke only when asked. She explained how Wei's wages had been withheld. She showed her copy of Vane's ledger. One former worker testified that Vane routinely added charges after men died or moved away. Another identified payments missing from the official books. Then the judge compared the handwriting. Figures had been altered, dates had been overwritten. The supposed acknowledgement bearing Lin Mei's signature contained legal phrases added in different ink. Vane's claim was dismissed. The judge ordered his records seized for investigation. When Vane rose to protest, the sheriff stepped behind him and told him to remain seated. Outside the courthouse, Jun drew a long breath. Is it finished? He asked. For us, Lin Mei said. Perhaps not for Mr. Vane. Lan reached for Eli's hand. He looked down at her small fingers wrapped around 2 of his. Then he closed his hand gently around hers. They returned to the Bar M, beneath a clear evening sky. Winter came early again that year, but the house was ready. The repaired barn held fresh hay. The cellar shelves carried jars of beans, cabbage, preserves, and dried herbs. Jun's sums improved. Lan's collection occupied an entire shelf in the schoolroom. Lin Mei continued receiving wages because she insisted that work and belonging were not the same thing. Eli agreed. In December, he brought the old piano bench to the kitchen and began repairing its broken leg. Lin Mei polished the piano. Jun found a book of songs inside the cedar chest, and Lan discovered that 3 keys still made sound. On Christmas morning, Eli placed a small wooden sign beside the front door. Lin Mei read the carved words silently. Bar M Ranch, Eli Mercer, Lin Mei Jun, and Lan. You left room at the bottom, she said. Names take space. For whom? Eli glanced toward the barn, where Jun was arguing with a calf and Lan was decorating the gate with red yarn. Whoever belongs here next. Lin Mei touched the new sign. Then she stood beside him as snow began falling over the yard. Eli opened the door. The children hurried inside, bringing cold air, laughter, and muddy boots with them. Lin Mei followed. Eli entered last and shut the door against the wind.